Abrir en 3, 2.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining. I am Jorge Gallego from the Office of Evaluation and Oversight of the IDB, and I will host this panel on policy evaluation in the times of artificial intelligence. Before we begin, some technical aspects. First, please remember to mute your microphone. Second, you can write your questions in the Q&A section. And third, in the world icon, you will find the interpretation in the language of your preference. I am now pleased to welcome the Director of the Office of Evaluation and Oversight, Ivory Young-Protzel, who will share with us some welcome remarks. Good afternoon, Ivory.
Hi, thank you, Jorge, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of OVE, the Office of Evaluation at the Inter-American Development Bank, it's a pleasure to welcome you to our event on artificial intelligence, a topic of great interest currently. At this time, all professional fields are being urged to examine its possibilities and unravel AI implications. And evaluation and monitoring field is no exception. But will those changes be welcome? What are the risks? Well, it will all depend on how we use the technology. Surely, this is not the first and will not be the last technological revolution in history. Many other technologies came in the past, transforming the way we work and transforming society more in general. And yet, we continue to use our human ability to think, adapt, and move forward. Through history, the openings of new possibilities have made us work more efficiently, go deeper, to do more interesting things, leaving some tedious tasks behind. However, we must always be cautious not to be blind to the risk they bring. Unknown risk of bias, for example, or the risk of giving up our judgment by accepting well-crafted phrases and as unquestionable truth. So each new technology, methodology, and approach must be nurtured and cultivated, but also pruned so that it contributes and it has its rightful place in the forest of knowledge and skills that we build to achieve our goals as professionals, as citizens. With this perspective, allow me to take you to our panel. We have Jorge Gallego and Fernando Barbosa, experts from our OVE team, along with Maria Isabel Mejia from CAF and Gonzalo Gomez from UNDP. Jorge will moderate the panel and will more properly introduce our panelists. You are in good hands, and I'm sure we will take many lessons and new reflections home with us. Thank you very much for your presence and to our panelists, and an excellent discussion for all.
Thank you very much, Ivory. So let me introduce our panelists. So first we have Maria Isabel Mejia. She's a senior executive at the Digital Transformation Directorate at CAF, Development Bank of Latin America, where she leads the digital transformation of the state in Ibero-American countries. She's a systems and computing engineer graduate from Universidad de los Andes in Colombia, where she also specialized in strategic information management. She served as the coordinator of the Y2K project for Colombia. She was the executive director of the program Computadores para Educar and the director of the Gobierno en Línea strategy some years ago. Between 2012 and 2016, she held the position of Vice Minister of Technologies and Information Systems. Second, we have Gonzalo Gomez, who serves as the chief of the Knowledge and Data Management section at the Independent Evaluation Office of the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. He holds a master's degree in business administration and a bachelor's degree in computer science, and he has amassed over 25 years experience at the UNDP. He began his journey at the Bolivia country office, later, he supported Atlas through the results-based management and project management at the regional level, and then as a program specialist for the UNDP's Regional Audit Center for Latin America and the Caribbean. Currently at the Knowledge and Data Management Unit, he oversees artificial intelligence projects and data management. Fernando Barbosa is a distinguished economist and a senior associate at the Office of Evaluation and Oversight at the IDB, where he also served as a research fellow. He achieved noteworthy success in prominent institutions such as the Brazilian Development Bank's Pension Fund and Itaú Unibanco, the largest financial conglomerate in the Southern Hemisphere. Fernando holds an MBA from Georgetown University, where he was a merit-based Prospanica Fellow and a BS in Economics from the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Rio de Janeiro. Finally, I'm Jorge Gallego. I am a senior evaluation specialist at the Office of Evaluation at Oversight at the IDB. I have also served as an associate and assistant professor of economics at Universidad Rosario in Colombia, and I have been a policy evaluation consultant at CAF and the National Planning Department in Colombia. I hold a PhD and an MA in political science from New York University and a BA and an MA in economics from Universidad Nacional de Colombia. So let us start with our panel and with our discussion. We will start with a 15-minute presentation from the panelists, and then we will have some room for discussion and Q&A. So let us start with Maria Isabel. Maria Isabel, thank you very much for joining today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jorge, and thank you for this kind invitation. I'm going to speak in Spanish and to share my presentation right now. Okay. Okay. Are you seeing the presentation?
We see the presentation perfectly, and please remember that if you go to the world icon, you can access to translation.
Okay, perfect. Bueno, entonces, ¿cómo se llama el panel? Voy a hacer como una introducción a este panel de evaluación de políticas públicas en los tiempos de la inteligencia artificial. No voy a hablar exactamente de evaluación de políticas públicas, pero sí dar como un marco de lo que venimos haciendo desde CAF en materia de políticas públicas de inteligencia artificial y cómo la inteligencia artificial también ayuda en la formulación, ejecución y evaluación de políticas públicas en general. Entonces, en CAF lideramos desde el 2020 una iniciativa cuyo objetivo es promover el uso estratégico de datos de inteligencia artificial en el sector público. A esa iniciativa le denominamos Experiencia y tenía básicamente tres objetivos específicos. Una era conocer el estado del arte del uso de la inteligencia artificial en el sector público. En 2020 no sabíamos exactamente para qué se estaba utilizando la inteligencia artificial en el sector público, qué tanta utilización había en los diferentes países de la región y cuáles eran como esos casos de uso, bueno, cuáles eran, digamos, como las dificultades y barreras que estaban enfrentando los gobiernos para el aprovechamiento de esta tecnología. Por otro lado, sensibilizar sobre precisamente estas oportunidades y los riesgos de la inteligencia artificial, entendiendo que hay muchas oportunidades en esta tecnología para el sector público. Queríamos dar a conocer cuáles son esas oportunidades, pero siempre haciendo un llamado al uso ético de la inteligencia artificial y alertando sobre los posibles riesgos. Y finalmente, queríamos no solo como estos dos primeros objetivos más como a generar conocimiento y darlo a conocer, sino concentrarnos también en brindar asistencia técnica a países o ciudades de la región de América Latina y el Caribe en sus estrategias de inteligencia artificial. A ver. Listo. Entonces, en ese momento veíamos tres grandes oportunidades del uso de inteligencia artificial en el sector público. La primera, vemos todavía una gran oportunidad en esta tecnología que combinada con la analítica de datos, pues nos ayuda a hacer una mejor formulación ejecución y evaluación de las políticas públicas. O sea, vemos que es una tecnología que apoya en todo el ciclo de vida de las políticas públicas. Sobre todo en la formulación, pues nos ayuda a entender una problemática que se pueda dar en una ciudad o que se pueda dar en un país, hace cuándo se da esa problemática, cuáles son las poblaciones afectadas, si esa tendencia está creciendo o está decreciendo, empezar a hacer ya predicciones y de pronto simulaciones de qué pasaría si tomamos esta decisión, e inclusive pues la inteligencia artificial le puede ayudar a uno a dar recomendaciones de política pública al entender como algún fenómeno que se está dando en una ciudad o en un país. Por otro lado, la segunda gran oportunidad que vemos es en el diseño y entrega de servicios a los ciudadanos, así como el sector privado le recomienda, con base en lo que conoce de nosotros, nos recomienda qué películas ver, qué comprar, qué ruta tomar. Igual el Estado podría aprovechar la inteligencia artificial para diseñar y ofrecer servicios a los ciudadanos más oportunos, más personalizados, más como en el momento que los necesita, y con mayor proactividad, que no sea esperando que el ciudadano pida un servicio, sino que el Estado como que se anticipe, un gobierno mucho más anticipatorio. Y obviamente una gran oportunidad de mejorar la eficiencia interna del Estado a través de la automatización de procesos. Por otro lado, entonces, hicimos como una documentación de casos de uso de inteligencia artificial en el sector público para ilustrar a los gerentes públicos de la región sobre cuáles precisamente son esas oportunidades. Entonces, y todo eso se compiló en este reporte que se llamó Experiencia, Datos e Inteligencia Artificial en el Sector Público, donde miramos las posibilidades de usar la inteligencia artificial, por ejemplo, en el campo de la salud para el diagnóstico y tratamiento de enfermedades, o en el campo de la educación, por ejemplo, para detectar a alumnos en riesgo de desertar, que es una problemática muy frecuente en los países de América Latina y el Caribe. Por lo tanto, una gran oportunidad para mejorar ese problema que tenemos en nuestra región. En el caso de la justicia, para automatizar procesos judiciales. Inclusive estamos apoyando desde CAFE en este momento un proyecto para automatizar partes del proceso judicial de violencia contra la mujer, que es otra problemática que tenemos común en muchos países de la región. Por ejemplo, en el medio ambiente puede servir para la gestión de residuos en las ciudades, una aplicación poderosísima para las administraciones tributarias de nuestros países es para la detección de evasión fiscal, y en el campo de las compras públicas para detectar irregularidades e ineficiencias en las compras públicas y patrones de corrupción, que también es otra problemática que compartimos en muchos de los países de la región. Como les decía, también brindamos asistencia técnica a países. Por ejemplo, a Panamá le ayudamos a hacer un marco de implementación de proyectos de análisis de datos. Perú, que no tenía una política de inteligencia artificial en ese momento, le ayudamos con unos lineamientos técnicos que nutrieron esa política. Empezamos a diseñar un sandbox regulatorio de inteligencia artificial en Chile, con 2 ciudades en Argentina. La Municipalidad de Vicente López le ayudamos a hacer como una hoja de ruta ética, porque ellos empezaron a desarrollar proyectos de inteligencia artificial y se empezaron como a enfrentar con esos dilemas éticos de esas soluciones que estaban haciendo. Digamos, temas de tal vez de falta de representatividad, de sesgo, como de problemas de privacidad también de los datos. Y en la Ciudad Autónoma de Buenos Aires, ellos quisieron crear un comité de ética de la inteligencia artificial, entonces les ayudamos a definir cómo iba a operar ese comité, quiénes lo podían conformar, etcétera. En Brasil, que expidieron, digamos, publicaron su política nacional de inteligencia artificial en 2021, les ayudamos a hacer un marco ético, pero para la aplicación de la inteligencia artificial específicamente en el sector público. Y un apoyo integral a Colombia. A la presidencia de la República también le ayudamos haciendo un marco ético de inteligencia artificial para el país, con un modelo de gobernanza de la inteligencia artificial, un modelo para hacer sandbox regulatorios en esta materia, y les ayudamos como a crear un task force dentro de la Presidencia de la República para liderar la política de inteligencia artificial desde el más alto nivel del gobierno. Con Jorge precisamente hicimos en la Veeduría Distrital de Bogotá una solución de inteligencia artificial para detectar irregularidades e ineficiencias en la contratación pública. Y le ayudamos también al Departamento Nacional de Planeación y al Ministerio TIC con un plan de infraestructuras de datos, pues que como ustedes saben son claves para que la inteligencia artificial funcione. Posteriormente, aparece a finales de 2021 la recomendación para la ética de la inteligencia artificial de UNESCO, adoptada por 193 países miembros. Entonces, en ese momento, hicimos una alianza con UNESCO para promover precisamente ese uso inclusivo y ético de la inteligencia artificial en la región. Nos propusimos dos grandes objetivos. Uno es apoyar como el diseño, pero no solo el diseño de políticas de inteligencia artificial, sino avanzar en la implementación. Porque muchas veces tenemos políticas, buenas políticas, pero no se avanza en la implementación. Y crear un consejo regional para la ética de la inteligencia artificial, ya les detallo esto. En cuanto a ese primer objetivo, entonces la acción de CAFE UNESCO se enfoca en apoyar a los países en el diseño y construcción de sus estrategias de inteligencia artificial y decidimos enfocarnos en hacer como unas herramientas que sean habilitadores de la implementación. Entonces, por ejemplo, ayudarle a los países a definir marcos de gobernanza para la inteligencia artificial, sandbox regulatorios o mecanismos más modernos de experimentación regulatoria que pueden aplicar para estas tecnologías que avanzan tan rápidamente, todo el tema de la ética, el talento que se requiere, que es uno de los mayores habilitadores para de verdad pasar a la implementación de la inteligencia artificial, y los datos. Entonces estamos como en la mitad entre una política nacional y ya la implementación de proyectos o soluciones particulares. Entonces estamos haciendo proyectos, esto está sucediendo en este momento. Por ejemplo, le estamos ayudando al Estado de Jalisco y acá a la Municipalidad de Vicente López, a cada uno de ellos, a hacer un laboratorio de ética de inteligencia artificial. Le vamos a ayudar al INAI de México a hacer un data trust, o sea, un modelo para compartición de datos. Estamos trabajando, ayudando a hacer como políticas nacionales de inteligencia artificial a países que no tenían ninguna política, como es República Dominicana y Costa Rica. A los dos les estamos apoyando en hacer su política nacional. Por ejemplo, a Uruguay, que ya tenía su política y la viene implementando hace unos 4 años, le estamos ayudando en el rediseño de su política, que originalmente fue muy enfocada en el sector público y ahora ellos quieren que tenga como un alcance mayor, un alcance país. Entonces les estamos ayudando en eso, así como en definir la institucionalidad que se requiere para la gobernanza de esa nueva estrategia, que es más amplia. Y finalmente, a la Agencia Nacional de Protección de Datos de Brasil, lo estamos apoyando para hacer el diseño y puesta en marcha de un sandbox regulatorio de inteligencia artificial. Para terminar, les cuento del Consejo Regional de Inteligencia Artificial que estamos creando con UNESCO. La idea es que sea un mecanismo como un órgano de gobernanza regional donde se puedan discutir potenciales regulaciones, estándares o donde se ven debates de tipo ético, pero a nivel de la región. Así como hay otras regiones como la Unión Europea u otras regiones del mundo que trabajan como región, esto es un poco un llamado a que la región de América Latina y el Caribe trabaje como región, tenga una voz en los debates que se están dando a nivel mundial. Y ahí se puedan dar ese tipo de discusiones y tomar las decisiones de cosas que le convengan más a nuestra región. Pero también, pues al principio va a ser un hub de conocimiento, va a ser el espacio para poder compartir experiencias, aprendizajes, barreras, dificultades y que entre todos aprendamos. Ese Consejo Regional se va a lanzar en Santiago de Chile el 23 y 24 de octubre en una cumbre de ministros y altas autoridades de inteligencia artificial. Entonces, pues aprovecho para invitarlos a esa cumbre. Con eso, Jorge, termino mi presentación y quedo disponible para las posteriores preguntas.
Muchas gracias, Marisabel. Thank you very much, and thanks for handling the time so well. And I am sure that all these efforts that you are leading will be very useful for us in the short and medium run as we start using artificial intelligence for our evaluations. I'm sure that all this framework in terms of ethics, security, regulation, so on and so forth will be very useful. I will apologize because I'm gonna have a dual role of host and panelist. So I'm sorry about that, but this is a topic that I really like. So I'm gonna share some of my thoughts with you. So this is a presentation on evaluation in the age of artificial intelligence. So in 1836, a young Edgar Allan Poe wrote an essay. This is not a novel. This is an essay discussing and analyzing Maisel's chess player, which is the famous mechanical Turk. It was a real invention at the time, and it was a machine capable of playing chess against any person, and in many cases it was able to defeat anyone. So Poe in this essay discusses how the machine could work, and he comes to the conclusion that it is impossible that at the time a machine would be able to do it. So there had to be a human mind behind the machine, and he was right. And one of the reasons why he concluded this is that a perfectly functioning mechanical chess should be flawless, and this machine was not flawless. It would lose some matches. But the story is very interesting because, you know, Poe was writing this essay. Look at the times. It was the peak of the Industrial Revolution, where the society was at the same time surprised about all the machines powered by steam that were enhancing our productivity, but also were replacing our jobs. So at the same time, the society was also scared. And I think that was a very similar situation with what we are, or some of us are feeling today. We are amused and surprised by all the things that generative artificial intelligence is able to do. But we're also a little bit worried about the potential implications of these tools for the society. The purpose of this talk is to learn or to discuss how these new technologies may power evaluation, but also to acknowledge some of the risks and challenges that we have for this. So recently, Bill Gates said that the age of artificial intelligence had started, and that is true, but he said this after ChatGPT was launched. And it is important to recognize that artificial intelligence has been with us for a while, and Maria Isabel's presentation shows that this has been discussed for a while. So I would trace the evolution of AI, or I would divide it into two types of AI: traditional or discriminative AI, and generative AI, which would be the second generation. So traditional artificial intelligence powered by machine learning has been with us for a while, and it affects our everyday lives in many ways, from the music that Spotify recommends us, to the movies that Netflix recommends, to the detection of cancer, to the prevention of corruption in public procurement, to the prevention of crime in our cities. There's many applications of the traditional artificial intelligence model, in which usually a trained data set on labeled data is used to classify or predict. The distinction is that the second generation generative artificial intelligence has the capability of generating new and unseen content similar to the data it was trained on. It uses a mixture of methodologies, such as supervised and semi-supervised methods, especially semi-supervised machine learning methods. And typical output is text, images, audio, as many of you probably are aware. So one of the key points of this presentation is that evaluation has already been transformed by artificial intelligence. Traditional AI has already changed the way in which we conduct evaluations, at least for three reasons. First, prediction policy problems. Prediction policy problems are very important in situations where policymakers want to understand the potential impacts of interventions beforehand. So it's the situation in which policymakers want to anticipate if an intervention, if a policy, if a program will have the intended effects or not. And that's very important for evaluation purposes. And there's numerous applications in the realms of health, education, security, justice, procurement, some of the examples that Maria Isabel presented. Second, traditional artificial intelligence has given us access to new and better data, from satellite images to GPS information, social media posts, smartphone data, credit card transaction, e-government information, automated surveys. We have new and better data, which allows us to measure in a better way some of the outputs and outcomes that we need for our evaluations. And third, and I think this is very important, causal inference, which is this way in which we think about the world and we think about whether programs achieve their objectives, has been enhanced by artificial intelligence. First, because we have new and powerful online experiments. Second, because quasi-experimental methods have been strengthened thanks to artificial intelligence. And third, because the area of heterogeneous treatment effects has been also enhanced by these methodologies. This is the example that Maria Isabel mentioned, the project in which we worked some years ago before I came to the IDB, in which we created an application for the use of Veeduría Distrital in Bogotá in order to prevent irregularities and inefficiencies in public procurement in Colombia. So this is a nice example in which we were able to use all these methods of artificial intelligence in order to evaluate beforehand whether certain interventions such as audits would work or not. I said that causal inference has been enhanced by machine learning and by artificial intelligence in general. First, we have new and better experiments, or new and more powerful experiments. And I'm thinking about online randomized control trials, such as A/B tests, survey experiments, or multi-arm bandit experiments. These type of experiments are very popular in the tech world, but they have also been used by governments to test different types of policies and interventions. Second, quasi-experimental methods have been enhanced thanks to machine learning. So now we have these doubly robust machine learning estimators, which are very credible in terms of identification of causal effects. And traditional methods such as instrumental variables or matching methods have also been enhanced by machine learning, because at the core of many of these methods, there's a prediction problem. And then, as I said before, the heterogeneous treatment effects area has been strengthened. This is the area in which we not only want to understand whether a policy works or not, but we want to understand in which subgroups or for which people a policy is gonna have the greatest impacts. So there's methodologies such as causal forests or policy learning, which have been enhanced. But I think we are here because we want to learn, or we want to discuss how generative artificial intelligence or the second generation of methods might be useful for evaluation. So one of the things about these new tools, about these new models, is their breadth. They are very useful for very different tasks. And this is a non-exhaustive list of functions that I think are very useful for evaluation. First, summarization. You know, as evaluators, we have to extract, process, analyze large volumes of data. Think about operational documents, think about surveys, think about interviews, large volumes of data. And with these tools, we are being able to condensate this vast amount of information. With these models, we are also able to do numerical analysis, such as summary or visualization analysis. The second useful function, in my opinion, is transformation. This is something that in many cases is tedious and takes a lot of time, but with these models, obviously we can do translation, grammar check, style correction. We can write our evaluation using a Shakespeare style with this type of large language models if we want to, but we can also do data pre-processing or feature extraction, which is important for quantitative evaluations. Third, we can do expansion. So maybe this is a secret that nobody wants to reveal, but I'm sure that many of us here now are using ChatGPT to generate some of the emails, reports, or text that we have to produce. From the quantitative perspective, data augmentation, which is very useful for certain type of tasks, can also be done with this. And I think the fourth function is in my opinion, the most useful, but at the same time, perhaps the most controversial. And it is that these models are useful for doing inference and analysis, from classification, information extraction, identification of topics in text, even sentiment analysis, which is useful for interviews or surveys or things like this, to the code interpreter, which is this function of ChatGPT, in which with natural language, it is possible to conduct descriptive, correlational, causal, or predictive analysis, just uploading a data set. So this is very interesting. Just to give you an example from my everyday job. So here at the bank, we are very interested in understanding whether policy-based lending leads to deep institutional reform at our countries. So usually when the bank uses this type of instruments, certain policy conditions are established that countries are supposed to fulfill. But a policy condition or an institutional reform may have a low, a medium, or a high depth. For instance, if you have to create a committee to discuss something, maybe that's a low depth policy condition. But if you have to go to the Congress and approve a pensional reform, that's a high depth policy condition. In 2015, OVE conducted an evaluation note of policy-based lending, and they did a classification of the different policy conditions of different operations of the bank. They had to do this classification manually. So they gathered a random sample of projects, and well, the evaluators read all these policy conditions and came to a conclusion, a verdict on whether the policy condition was a high, medium, or low depth. The screen that you see, or the slide that you see in this moment, is an example of how you can do this using ChatGPT. I simply give or prompt the model the definition of low, medium, high depth policy condition, and then I give a list of policy conditions, and I'm asking the model to return a code in CSV that I can use in the future with the classification. And this coincides with the classification that was done in 2015 by evaluators. Obviously, this was done in seconds, and it is possible to do this for all the policy conditions that we have and not for a random sample. So this is an example of how this type of functions enhance our productivity. Here at the bank, we follow the development effectiveness framework, which is the methodology we use for evaluating the operations and the actions of the bank. And there's 4 important criteria, there's other criteria that are used for this purpose. And I argue that large language models or generative artificial intelligence can be used for many of these evaluations, or for evaluating many of these criteria. In terms of relevance, for instance, these tools are useful to do context understanding by tracking news and tracking different documents, even to do trend analysis. And we can also automate the process of defining whether there's alignment of country needs and institutional priorities with the objectives of projects. And Fernando will talk a little bit more about that. In terms of effectiveness, I'm sure that we can use these models to help us judge whether we can attribute the effects of programs or actions to these interventions. In terms of efficiencies, these models might be useful to interpret the assumptions, reliability, and the sensitivity analysis of cost benefit and cost effectiveness analysis. In terms of sustainability, I'm sure that these methods or these models will be useful to interpret whether the risk mitigation strategies are appropriate, and even to predict patterns and potential risks that might affect the interventions. And then there's other use cases. But to conclude, because my time is coming to an end, obviously there's risks and challenges, and we need to be aware. There's ethical risks. Obviously, these models might introduce or might have biases. They were constructed by human beings, and these biases might affect the way we evaluate the outcomes of our interventions. Also, there's a problem of informed consent of the data used by artificial intelligence models. It's really tricky. In terms of security, our organizations, we use sensitive data or data that we cannot share with anybody. So there's the risk of breaches. So we need advanced data encryption and secure algorithms. Obviously, job displacement is also an issue in the evaluation world. Automation might reduce demand for some traditional evaluation roles. And we also need to acquire new skills and adapt to these new methodologies. Interpretability and precision, this is very important. We know that AI models may hallucinate and may be subject to misinformation and manipulation, and this might affect the way we conduct evaluations. Also, black boxes are not very useful. We need models that can be interpreted, and we need to scale these to handle large data sets, and we need to comply with legal and regulatory frameworks. So, to finish, in terms of the road ahead, I know many of us or many institutions are creating tools or are starting to use AI tools for their job. So I would say these are the guiding principles for the creation, development, and use of this type of models. We need precise, secure, ethical, usable, and versatile models along the lines that I discussed here and in connection with the risks that I identified before. And well, I like this cartoon. I don't know if some of you are worried or not, but I think we are far away from the world in which we will be dominated by machines. I certainly think that this type of models are enhancing and will enhance our productivity. But I know that there's challenges ahead. Some useful resources. Gonzalo will talk about the AIRA platform, and there's other very nice, interesting tools out there that we might use for our evaluation. So thank you very much. And without taking more time, let me pass the floor to Fernando, who will give us another presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jorge. I'll share my screen here. My colleagues were talking about AI more broadly, and I'll focus on small examples of large language models, or LLM, very much in line with the possibilities Jorge showed us. As you may know, LLM is the concept behind ChatGPT and Google Bard. And it's impressive that it seems part of our days today, but 3 months ago, it would look like magic, right? First of all, why are we testing AI? Our work as evaluators involve reading documents, comparing plans, gathering multiple information, but the world is way faster today, and so are the needs of our institutions and clients. So how can we improve the quality of our work facing constraints of time, people, and funding? Well, AI may help us to handle those volumes of information. It can serve as assistants doing a task for us. And AI also reduces the dependency on tech experts because we can apply the same tool for several different cases. So you can test AI yourself. If the result is not good enough, just change your question, change your prompt. Keeping that in mind, I'll show you 3 simple applications today at OVI. Then I'll describe the tools to do it, discuss a bit about benefits and concerns, explore possibilities for the near future, and conclude. Okay. This image represents our applications. They all use the same engine, as I said. For each one, I need some building blocks, basically inputs for the model. Then AI applications here on the right, okay? In the first use case, AI finds the location of projects in Brazil based on a short description. The second and the third are about project alignment. In the second, I decide the project alignment and select pieces of evidence. Then AI use the evidence to explain why I choose that alignment. It's more like a writing tool, okay? And in the third, we just provide a text, a full text, and AI classifies the project in one or more alignment and then explain why it has chosen those. The difference here is that AI in the third example, the AI clearly takes a decision, decide the alignment. Okay, Let's go one by one. Yeah, here in the first, we want to identify the state where a project was executed. From our database, we have a project name, a summary, and executing agency of each project. I'll call the AI function 320 times because we have 320 projects here. And then it gives me the states of each project, okay? Let's zoom in an example to be clear. Right here is the project name, the project summary, the executing agency, and the reply from the model, the state. It says that the first project was in Rio, the second in São Paulo. It's important to note that I may not have the state anywhere in the input. For example, in the second row, you see that the project was in Tietê River, but the model recognized the Tietê River is in São Paulo in Brazil, and then gives me the right answer. It's something I cannot write usual code for. Okay, so I have the states. The next example, the example 2, is like a writing tool, as I said. For this, as a building block, we use MaxQDA. It's a software like in Vivo to select these evidences of alignments of a project. So we first select each evidence and says it's aligned to something. And then what the AI do for me is get this sentence and write a paragraph. So I'll call again the same formula. I have 900 evidences in my project, in my example, and it writes the paragraphs. Here in the right, I put the prompt, so the message, what I ask the AI to do. So just as an example, act as a policy evaluator. I'll provide you extracts about a project in less than 80 words in Spanish. Explain why the project aligns with the objective of simplified tax payment. Okay. So here is a spreadsheet. As I said, it's just a formula you can use, like use an average or a sum, but behind it is the artificial intelligence. So a column of alignments, a column of extracts, and then my output, the result of this formula is a explanation that why the extract is aligned, why the extract explain the alignment, right? So here, for example, again, the project is aligned with the object of increasing the adoption of electronic solutions, specifically in component 2, which seeks to improve taxpayer service, and etc. and go on. And finally, I'll go to the third application. The third application is the most ambitious because there is an explicit decision process. It involves way more discussion to use it. In the third, we want to check if projects align with strategic objectives, but my input is just raw text, just full paragraphs or PDFs. And then I call again the function, the same function, and I ask it to classify a project in one of 13 categories, and then explain why it's chosen. Here again, another example. The AI said the category that best fits this project is increasing the role of the private sector, since it seeks to promote sustainable economic recovery of MSMEs, etc. So the reply could be as big as you want. So we can say, I want the answer in 70 words or in 100 words. And the result depends on that. It might be better or worse depending on how big it is, okay? And this example is interesting because it has implications in terms of time, especially, and you had classified 320 projects, okay? And it's fair to say it takes about an hour per project to do it by hand, because we need to classify in cross-cutting issues, such as gender equality, for example, and classify strategic objectives and expected results. So the final result would be 320 hours of labor saved, which means 2 people full-time for a month. It's an impressive result for me. Now that we've seen the 3 applications, I'll show you quickly how the formula works. It's a connection to the GPT model API. We wrote the code in JavaScript, and using API is important because we can control better the result of the formula. It's not like using in the website, using ChatGPT. We have more control over the parameters, okay? And the most important parameter is temperature, because here you can adjust the creativity or how precise it is. And we set the temperature to 0 because it's more precise and consistent. This is the formula, OVGPT4. In that case, we have others, and there's a prompt inside. Notice that we only need 1 prompt. However, the prompt can be the combination of anything, of any formula. After looking these applications, let's look some benefits and operational concerns. So we know that there are several benefits to uncover, but also several risks and more profound risks. But I'll focus here only on some operational concerns. Okay. So for me, the benefits of this application is scale. You can analyze any amount of information in parallel. Speed, it takes 5 to 10 seconds. Versatility, we can use the model for many use cases. And consistency, because once the prompt is set, the decisions are very stable in my test. But also there are fundamental concerns we are going to debate today, but just in terms of operational risks, accuracy is always a point. Machines sometimes can be confident, but totally wrong. Cost, there is a cost in our model. It's about 2 to 6 cents of dollar per page of information. So we should be mindful in our usage of it. And these models tend to be sensitive to the prompt, to our question. So if you change a bit the question, the result might change a lot. And finally, reproducibility. It's hard to replicate one text, one result. So what's next for us? Well, the evolution of AI is astonishing. So something new is released every single day, and we may change our plans. But for now, our next step is using our internal knowledge base within AI. Develop our internal chatbot to be able to ask questions about our products. Think about using an internal LLM, internal model, not using OpenAI engine, and integrate AI to other tools we have to create more checks and balances at the office. To conclude from what I've seen so far in the market and testing AI in different contexts, AI is here to stay. It's disruptive, but it's not an all or nothing solution. The best solution depends on the task, on the level of control, on the precision, but it's not only about having the most independent or the most expensive tool, right? For example, is the technology ready for the application 3 that I showed you? Maybe, but is the debate about its implications mature enough? I don't think so. And finally, our profession will change, and AI is raising new questions. For example, as Jorge said, do we still need sampling? Should we learn to be peer reviewers of AI? Where should we focus our energy ahead? Okay. So in sum, imagine the evolution of cars. We are not yet getting into a car to just read a book. However, I use Google Maps, I use camera, I use even blink sensors and so on. So we still keep our hands on the steering wheel, but with assistance, at least for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fernando. Very interesting, all these applications and all the discussion. So now it's time for Gonzalo Gomez from UNDP. The floor is yours, Gonzalo.
Thank you, Jorge. Fernando, if you can stop sharing. Okay, thank you so much. Let me share my screen. Great. Can you see the screen? Yes, good. Hello, again, I'm Gonzalo Gomez from the Independent Evaluation Office of UNDP, and I'm going to share the journey for a tool that we call AIDA, or the Artificial Intelligence for Development Analytics. And thank you, Marisabel, Jorge, for setting up the ground, and Fernando, on how we can tailor something to a specific need, because when you talk about artificial intelligence, you think that the world is different and it will do everything for you, right? That nobody will work after this. But it's not our case. UNDP was storing evaluations for quite some time in a tool that we call the Evaluation Resource Center. And basically, all information stored there is publicly available, is open. So the first thing of disclosing private information, we sorted out with this because we are using public information. But what is the problem that we have? The tool was designed to do evaluation planning, to track management responses, and to upload documents, right? And all you were able to do is to search based on the labels that you were adding or tagging manually of the different evaluation reports. And the database includes more than 6,000 reports, with roughly 20% in non-English language. So when we were thinking on how we can tap into a tool that can help us get inside the reports, we needed to put everything in one language to avoid having several different models. So every year we have between 300 and 400 new evaluations that are added to the system. And what was the main challenge with this system? You are not able to search inside the reports. So basically, you can search the labels, you can search the titles, but not inside the report and get like reading manually. And what happened during the COVID-19 and the different lockdowns? We started doing a reflection series, which is a kind of synthesizing knowledge and getting lessons from it manually. And reading 6,000 reports, or having the evaluators remember that when they conducted one evaluation a few years back for a crisis similar, like Ebola or other things, it was do everything manual. So we started with a vision, and we established a partnership through UNDP Information and Technology Management Unit. We established the collaboration with the International Computing Center of the United Nations, or UNICC, and with Amazon, at that moment with Amazon Web Services. Although we knocked different doors, like Microsoft and Google, they were offering us basically out-of-the-shelf solutions. So nobody was going to tailor something to our needs, and that's why we went with Amazon. And the idea was how to move towards utilization of AI with supervised machine learning. And why supervised? Because we needed human in the loop. That's how we call it. To supervise that the machine is doing what we want and is not taking us somewhere else, right? Or hallucinating on or generating something that we don't want. But initially we wanted to go inside the reports, then generate lessons from the evaluations, and improve the predictive and analytical capacity of the IO, something that Jorge was just saying. So we divided in two different phases the project. First, it was the platform, extracting the text, labeling, and putting the search functionalities. This is already working. You can visit in the link that was shared in the chat. And then the second phase that we are working right now is the analytical capabilities to perform sentiment analysis on evaluation evidence, and then use secondary data for insight generation that we are using topic modeling. I will go into further details. So this is roughly what we did. We established a data pipeline to ingest the information from ERC using documents in PDF and Word. And you can imagine the crazy thing about ingesting PDF, multiple columns, graphs, tables, footnotes, and so on. But what we wanted? We wanted that the algorithm extracts the information and understands three things: findings, conclusions, and recommendations, because that is the basis of an evaluation report. We wanted the machine to learn where is a finding in the text, where is a conclusion and a recommendation. We prepared 500 evaluation reports to do the training of the machine. And this is similar to having a person that you are teaching, and whenever he's making mistakes, you supervise the machine and you give feedback to the machine. So that is why we established the human in the loop. And then we developed the web application that you already saw. So this is the simplified pipeline. The data acquisition was more than 6,000 reports. The text extraction using two different tools, one open source and one not open source. Then using a comprehension to understand what I was telling you, the finding, conclusion, and recommendation, and then a machine learning search with human feedback where you can put thumbs up, thumbs down. But one thing that we wanted is export what you obtain as a result. There is one interesting part here. When we were searching in the market, everybody was extracting sentences. But for a human to understand the context of what you're reading, it was important to have more text. So we focus on extracting paragraphs. So we don't extract one sentence, we have paragraphs. That when you read is giving you more information to see whether that text that AIDA is getting is meaningful for you as an evaluator or as a program or project designer as feedback, right? So as of today, this is the architecture we have behind the scenes, which is very complex. And we have the data pipeline, the enhanced extraction, translation. We included a translation tool that translated from Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabic to English, right? Because the model is in English. The comprehension and model training was done to identify the findings, conclusions, and recommendations, as I said. And we have the structure in the architecture ready to implement multi-institution. What is this? We think that we cannot compete and not collaborate at this stage. We need to collaborate between the different multiple institutions that are working on this. And other UN agencies or UN entities can join us, or other evaluation offices, to put in the same database and go through the same pipeline. The part that we are working that is not yet ready is the sentiment analysis, the insight generation, and Jorge was saying about the topic modeling, summarization, and pattern detection. And summarization, we are experimenting with ChatGPT, just as Fernando was showing, with an API where you pass the results of AIDA and it generates a summary for you. And a web portal that is, of course, more powerful and that has more intuitive things to help us, right? So the machine learning model development, it was like this: ingest paragraphs from the text extraction module, identify the paragraph as finding, conclusions, and recommendations, and apply the UNDP work-specific labels on paragraphs. Now, what is the specific label? We developed a taxonomy with 250 categories that are related to the development world. And we mapped everything initially internally to the signature solutions of UNDP and then to the SDGs. So basically, in the new portal that will be available by the end of July, you will be able to search SDG 5 and it will give you all the information that we mapped based on the labels that we assigned, that the machine assigned, right? So the thematic, we separated thematic labels and non-thematic tags, right? Because we needed to do both. Not everything is falling under a thematic area. The taxonomy that I was mentioning, it was validated also with other stakeholders. So we needed to build a team of 6 analysts for doing the labeling manually, for improving and filtering the taxonomy. And then, as I mentioned, the 500 reports that we used to do the training. The translation, again, we needed only one model in English, but what was the other need that we wanted is that once the tool gives you the translated text, you have the link to go to our database in ERC and download the document in the original language, right? If you want to do that. So the portal, as you can see it here, is query-based searches. It's not searching for a word only. It will search based on the labels that you assign to the different paragraphs. And it will search thousands of reports at paragraph level in a matter of seconds, right? So this is something that when we were doing the reflection series manually, it took a lot of time. And reading 6,000 reports, you can have an army of consultants reading, and you will not be as efficient as a machine. But we are not replacing the evaluator. We are just making things easier, right? And exporting to Excel where you can do further analysis. The sentiment analysis. This is a very challenging part where the model is ready. We are just implementing it right now, and it will be available by the end of July. What is interesting about the sentiment analysis, especially for UNDP or for UN, we tend to have a very neutral language, right? We don't say things straight like in social media. I like this or I don't like this, right? In our cases, the program was performing well, results were being achieved. Nevertheless, there are things to improve. And that nevertheless, there are things to improve changes the sentiment of positive to maybe negative. So we collaborated with the University of Essex to improve the performance of sentiment analysis, and we augmented the model with the Zeppelin University using data from different reports. We tested 185 paragraphs that were hand labeled by the IO team, and this is the efficiency that we got. But there is one interesting thing here. The sentiment analysis model was more efficient at sentence level rather than paragraph. So we get the sentence score, and then we aggregate at paragraph level. Okay? This is one example that you can see a positive or a mixed and negative of what the machine is telling you. And this helps us to go one step further, because once you have the sentiment analysis, you can combine with other data and do the topic modeling and do the pattern detection. And we are using the world development indicators and internal data of UNDP to know how a specific office is performing. But also you can compare one office in one region to another office in another region and know what lessons you can learn from what is being done. I will give you an example. For example, if you go to the Pacific Islands and you compare it to the Caribbean islands, you have similarities that sometimes you don't see, right? But the machine can give you the patterns to learn about it. So the evaluator or the program or project designer can learn from it. So that was what we wanted. And we used, let me show you a comparison of what we did for the Leave No One Behind evaluation. IO conducted an evaluation last year on the Leave No One Behind principle of the SDGs. In the past, we were using ERC, our own system, and NVivo, right? And this is what we were able to find evidence as in past evaluations that we've been storing for over 20 years. But we did the same with AIDA. And since AIDA is not an engine that is searching only a word, it's rather a platform that uses artificial intelligence to search based on the labels that you assign the information in the different reports. It's like reading the reports. You can see with this heat map how different and how powerful AIDA was to help us with the LNOB. Finally, the web portal enhancements. We are working on adding, at the moment we have some filters that you can add, but here is even more powerful, because at the moment you can export to Excel all the results or the selected results, or only findings, or only conclusions, or only recommendations based on your filter criteria that can be country, region, SDGs, and so on. But what we are doing now is you can select the different results, and you can put to a corpus of information where you can basically compile what you want to search, and then you can download it and you can further work on it. And for the pattern detections and so on, you can see the charts there where we will be able to see how is performing in one or other areas of work, right? So this journey apparently is very simple, what I'm showing you, but it took us 3 years right now. And we are very mindful of ethics in this case. Why? Because we wanted to know that the information that we are using is transparent, is open to public, and that we are not generating something outside of the evidence of the evaluations. And our evaluations were triangulated. We are only using evaluations. We are not using self-reported progress reports or other inputs. So this tool is designed to help people designing or creating new projects and programs, and evaluators, especially when we are doing synthesis. I'll stop there. Thank you. Back to you, Jorge.
Thank you very much, Gonzalo. As you said, this tool was created before all the ChatGPT craziness. So you are, I mean, UNDP is one of the precursors of using artificial intelligence, and it's very nice to see that the tool is being improved and that it is evolving. So thank you very much to the panelists. Now we will have some discussion and some Q&As. So remember, there's the Q&A button where you can put your questions in any language. We have translation. Also, one thing before we start with the questions, some advertisements. So taking advantage of this discussion, through the chat, we will provide a link to a course designed by the social sector of the Inter-American Development Bank on how to make responsible use of artificial intelligence. And this can serve as an additional resource on the subject. So I think the link is already there in the webinar chat, and you're encouraged to take a look at the course by our colleagues. So there's a couple of questions on whether we're going to share the presentations of the webinar. So first, this webinar is being recorded, so all the participants will receive a link with the webinar, and then there's going to be a newsletter, and some of the presentations will be shared. Okay, then there's the first question by Raúl Arguello. I think is very provoking. I think that the webinar has been interesting in the sense that we've been discussing like general big issues, especially with Maria Isabel and my own presentation. And then we covered some particular applications with Fernando and Gonzalo. So that's very interesting. I would say this first question is like a big picture, and it relates with a question that I had planned beforehand. So Raúl's question is, I'm going to read it in Spanish. Es conveniente prescindir en algunos casos, según se indicó, de los expertos de los diferentes sectores para analizar e interpretar las entradas, salidas, input-output algoritmos. And that has to do with the question that I originally had stated in terms of job displacement. There is this ongoing debate about AI automating jobs, which may include some of our tasks. So in your opinion, will AI replace us, or will it redefine our skills and tasks required for the profession? How should we adapt? So that's the question, and that's Raúl's question as well. So I don't know who feels encouraged to answer this question. Is unemployment a big risk?
Jorge,
Adelante, Maris.
¿quieres? Yo me lanzo al ruedo.
Dale.
Mira, precisamente esta mañana estaba en un panel hablando sobre el impacto de la inteligencia artificial generativa como en el futuro del trabajo, que ya deberíamos hablar en el presente del trabajo. Y digamos que yo por un lado lo que veo es que el impacto que tenía la inteligencia artificial de la que teníamos hasta el año pasado era uno, y el que tiene la inteligencia artificial generativa, pues yo lo veo mayor. Digamos que el que yo veía en la discriminatoria es que tú le dices, ¿no, Jorge? A la antigua, a la vieja.
Sí.
Digamos que había como impacto en tareas que hacían los humanos, tareas que eran repetitivas, podrían ser automatizadas y reemplazadas pues perfectamente por una inteligencia artificial, y veíamos como con relativa tranquilidad que los humanos podían trabajar colaborativamente con la inteligencia artificial. Pero es que realmente el poder de esta inteligencia artificial generativa yo lo veo mayor, porque pues ya no es solamente el reemplazo de tareas repetitivas, sino de tareas que requieren ya mucho más análisis y que requieren de pronto tomar decisiones y actividades mucho más creativas. Entonces yo creo que ahí el impacto en el desplazamiento de empleos puede ser mayor. Esta mañana en el panel entrevistábamos a una persona que era rectora de una universidad, y para ver el impacto en educación de una persona, de un artista, para ver el impacto en todos estos temas de economías creativas, digamos, y para los periodistas. Y digamos que los tres se pusieron, los tres tenían como un consenso en que el impacto, en que no iba a reemplazar a los periodistas siempre y cuando los periodistas fueran más allá, y a los profesores o a los alumnos siempre y cuando hubiera un pensamiento crítico además de, ¿no? Y definitivamente el artista sí decía que definitivamente la inteligencia artificial, pues por lo menos con los avances hasta ahora, no iba a poder reemplazar como eso que puede como digamos, crear una persona que transmite un dolor, o que transmite una desesperanza, o que transmite eso. Él dice que la inteligencia artificial no lo puede transmitir a través de un acto creativo. Entonces, digamos que lo que se decía era que se iba a poder seguir trabajando colaborativamente con esta inteligencia artificial generativa, pero definitivamente hay algunas tareas como, no sé, los diseñadores gráficos, pues tienen que ponerse las pilas porque muy seguramente no va a contratar uno ya un diseñador gráfico para que le ayude a hacer un logo o para que le ayude a hacer un diseño sencillo. Entonces el impacto realmente es mayor, y es una cosa que de verdad yo creo que deben ver los gobiernos seriamente, porque se hacen muchos estudios, se muestra el impacto, pero yo no veo que los gobiernos estén implementando estrategias para mitigar ese impacto que tienen estas tecnologías en el empleo.
Muchas gracias, María Isabel. Gonzalo, I think you want to jump in.
Yeah, thank you, Jorge, and thank you and Ivory for opening this space that is very much needed at this time. And you're right, when we talk about ChatGPT and how generative AI is taking the world by storm, but we need to also take into account that ChatGPT or other tools took the information from internet as of September 2021, where it was basically taking everything, including fake information, fake news, and so on, right? And when you take this to the creative part that Maria Isabel was referring to, actually the natural creativeness from a human being is not replaced, right? Because what we are seeing generated by AI is reproduced. But if you put this in a context, and let's see how the Industrial Revolution happened, and how robots started to replace humans in the different factories. It happened, right? It's not something that will not happen. And I think evolution means that we need to evolve and do something differently. And if you are an evaluator, that you are doing evaluations and the data collection and the evidence that you can gather, that in the past it took you 3 months and now it takes you 1 week, you will be more efficient. Of course, there are some sectors, like Maria Isabel was saying, that will be more affected. But that means that we need to rethink on how we approach certain things. And I think the role of governments and the organizations as the banks or as the UN, we need to work with them. The part that is worrying is the speed at what this is evolving. And not everybody is taking it at that speed, right? Replacing human labor is one thing, but education is the other area where we need to perhaps address certain gaps and make our children aware of these tools on how they can be better with the tools. Because I saw that some people wanted to stop this. This cannot be stopped. Yeah, it's not like everybody says, let's stop. It cannot be stopped. At the same time, you cannot stop people that will no longer work in these areas. When we introduce robots in the car manufacturing industry, a lot of people lost their jobs. But the worry is that this will be a bigger effect, because not only one sector, but 10 sectors will be affected. But again, if we are good in finding the creativeness that cannot be replaced, that area for sure will continue to exist, and the tools will help you on being better. I'll stop there. Back to you, Jorge.
Thank you very much, Gonzalo. This is certainly very interesting. There's some questions, so I will go to the next one. This one is for Fernando, and I think it's specific to his example, but I think it's also a general question. So what kind of measures were you applying to ensure the quality of the output of LLMs? What kind of systematic quality assurance should we implement to AI? I think this is specific to your example, Fernando, but it's also very general, because I mentioned all these risks of hallucination, misinformation, manipulation, which I think in the context of evaluations is critical. And I would give an example. Let's say ChatGPT says policy X is not effective to increase outcome Y. And we don't know why ChatGPT said that, but it said that. And then an evaluator reads this and writes a blog or a post where, or an evaluation report where he says this. And then this perpetuates, and the next generations of LLMs will be trained with this content, and then we will have like a situation in which something that might not be true establishes as a fact. So how can we prevent this type of things, Fernando?
Your point is very interesting, Jorge, about training because we have the risk of converging for the average, like we have in statistics, right? Because if you're training with the content created by the models, then we just have an average text or average information, and maybe the average is misleading. But how can we test? How can we organize tests with AI? So in general, I like to use a process like named unit testing when we describe how to test any product. But here I have 3 steps basically now. One is generating the answer from the models. The second step is generating human answers for that, but humans not seeing the answer of the model, right? So not simulated answer. And then finally, a third test that is someone checking if the model was right or not. So with these 3 information, we can evaluate the models, and it depends very much on not only on the parameters you use, but also on the prompt. That's important. So if you change a bit the prompt, your answer may change a lot. Okay, so it's a big task to test those.
Thank you, Fernando. I'm coming back to the first question, to Raul's question. I think we will still need experts, because I think his concern or his question was like, okay, so we don't need experts because now we have machines that might tell us what's happening in a sector, or if something works or does not work. But I think that is not the case. I think, as I said before, with all these limitations of these models, I think we still need experts, and we need people who know the fields, judging whether this information, this content, these outcomes from the models make sense or not. Fernando wants to jump in again, and if Gonzalo or Maria Isabel want to
yeah, sorry, just an example. I was testing our model in projects with the public sector and with the private sector. So it works better with products with the public sector and very badly with private sector, because we have small descriptions. So the model can work in some kind of projects and not in others. So it depends of many variables, right? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a bunch of questions on AIRA. I think people are very interested in this tool. Anonymous attendee asks whether the AIRA tool can cross-analyze the evaluations, for example, recommendations to increase school attendance from several evaluations in country X. That's one question. Pablo asks, what does sentiment mean in this context? This was in the context of Gonzalo's presentation. And then there's this question on whether the system, there's this comment by Silva, the system is great for dealing with existing categorizations, love it. However, the challenge is that we have AIs trained in conventional reporting and scanning conventional reporting. The risk of narrowing the view is very real. Once you have this great work of categorization, will you try to understand what are the blind spots, or can you then question through ethical frameworks the limitations of the system? So these 3 questions are on AIRA.
Perfect, Jorge. Thank you. And thank you for the questions. Let me start with the sentiment. That is one of the straightforward answers. In social media, the sentiment analysis is done to know what is you are supporting, and your sentiment is positive, means you're happy, you like this, or you're not happy, you dislike this, or neutral is like it's not good or bad. So in this context, sentiment means that whenever we have a finding or a conclusion where the evaluator wrote something that is negative, meaning that it found something that is not working well, and when the sentiment is positive, it found something that is working well, that is good to replicate. So that's why we needed to understand the sentiment in the different paragraphs that we have to say this part of the intervention or the project that you have is working well. So it's worth being replicated because it's saying something positive about the finding. And also when it's negative, and sometimes negative is something you want to avoid if you do a similar project. And the neutral means that is a mix between positive and negative. And perhaps that is the most challenging part because most of the time we try to be neutral in the language of international corporations and especially in UNDP's field, right? So what we did is we put it different degrees of positive and negative to then see how you are performing. If you get an area and you have like 10 results that are positive, you want to learn from that. What is working? Why is positive? You can go back to the evidence that you have. So that is how sentiment is perceived here. And no solution out of the shelf, a pre-existing solution was working because of the nuances of the language of UNDP and UN. So that is part of the sentiment that we developed our own customized model. In terms of cross-analyzed evaluations, that is the phase 2. It's not yet ready. We are doing the pattern detection and then the topic modeling, where you will be able to cross-analyze the evaluations. Basically, you will see the results, and we have a kind of 4-quadrant where you can click one thing, and one part is one topic, and the topic will tell you what is working, what is not working, based on what you want. The idea is the tool is not mainly for evaluators, okay? The tool is mainly for program people or for people dealing with public policies. When you are designing something, you want to know what worked and what didn't work and how you can improve. So that is where we will be able to cross-analyze. And something that we understood is that having UNDP's view only, which is our evaluations only, is a very narrow view. So that's why we changed the architecture of AIDA to make it support multiple institutions, not only UN. So the idea is that we can collaborate with other institutions and we can bring more evaluation reports where you will be able to cross-analyze not only UNDP, but other institutions as well. And then it will be more meaningful, right? And regarding the challenges in conventional reporting, yes. We can talk here about biases. Every single system is biased because we designed with one thing in mind, right? And initially, the bias was, it was tailored for UNDP's needs. And basically, the narrow view is our reporting. But what happened with the introduction of AIDA, we learned that having a very nice design, like a very 2-column design with nice graphs and so on, it was not very good for the ingestion of the reports to the artificial intelligence model. So we changed the reports. And now it's only 1 column, it's simplified in certain ways. So basically you are addressing certain parts of the conventional reporting to improve reporting. And then you can see what things you can express in a different way. But this was Silva, right? Blind spots, yes, of course. The idea is once we finish with AIDA phase 2, that is by the end of July, we will learn from this because the system has limitations. And the system has challenges that the technology poses right now. And one of the things that we try to avoid is what is called data leakage. Because, you know, sometimes the AI models will not include all the information. They will exclude certain information. And by excluding certain information, you are leaking the data that maybe something relevant is there. So that's why we included all the evaluations regardless of the quality or the rating that we have. But we wanted to avoid on going that road and trying to avoid as much as possible having these blind spots. But the other part where AIDA helps us in terms of information that is not being, it's not a black box. The machine So that we have is not only black box, that is a predetermined way of processing information. We included the human in the loop, which is a human being verifying what the machine is doing. And sometimes if something is there that shouldn't be there, you will retrain the machine or teach the machine on doing differently. But the challenges are there, and absolutely we need to be aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gonzalo. There's two final questions that we're out of time, but maybe we have 1 or 2 minutes for this. The questions, one is related to AIRA, which is how Camilo asked, how is privacy of context provided to the model managed during the process? Sharing private data to the chat could be harmful for the organization. And this is, I think, a general question for all of us who start using this, right? We work with confidential information, we have to be careful. And then Cynthia has like a general question on how, given all these advantages of AI, how do you think evaluation, teaching, and training change for future evaluators and current evaluators? What types of skills would be most valuable to contribute to evaluation work? So the first one is for Gonzalo. The second one, anyone can answer.
Thank you, Jorge. Okay, privacy of context provided in the model. One of the things is we are using all publicly available reports. So you can go to the website and you can download. So we are not sharing any private data or confidential data. And one thing that we thought when we started experimenting with ChatGPT is there are two different scenarios: working with OpenAI or working with Microsoft through Azure platform. And through Azure platform, Microsoft offers you a kind of only working on your data set without expanding. So yeah, we are addressing that. But from a privacy point of view, the data we have in the system is public, so there is no problem with that. Of course, we are not sharing, for example, since we are only extracting findings, conclusions, and recommendations, we are not extracting name of the evaluator, people interviewed. That is remaining in the evaluation report, but not in the artificial intelligence machine learning. Back to you, Jorge.
Thank you. No, and in terms of Cynthia's question, I think one of the things of this second generation of Gen AI is that it's somehow democratic, like as opposed to the first generation. I mean, in the first generation, in order to train a machine learning algorithm to do some classification task, some topic modeling, or some sentiment analysis, I mean, you need to have some skills, some quantitative and computational skills to do that. But with these new models, with ChatGPT or with the tailor-made tools like AIRA or some of the others that you can find out there, you can use natural language to do that. So I think it's an interesting question, right? I still think evaluators need to familiarize with the things behind the scenes, right? With the methods behind the scenes, with supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised machine learning, one-shot learning, all these tools that are behind the scenes giving the answers, right? So because we don't want to have black boxes, right? We need interpretability, and we need to understand where the answers are coming from. But yeah, I think new skills are important. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in or.
No, solo como repetir que la habilidad de critical thinking, o sea, del pensamiento crítico, hay que fortalecerla en todos los niveles, en todas las profesiones y sobre todo desde los niños. Me parece que es una habilidad completamente necesaria para convivir y sacar realmente provecho de una herramienta tecnológica como esta, para que realmente sea positiva y no negativa para la sociedad, para la democracia y en general pues para la humanidad. Entonces el pensamiento crítico para mí es la habilidad más importante.
De acuerdo, muy interesante tu planteamiento, María Isabel. I think we're out of time. There's another question in the chat, but they're telling me we run out of time. Some final acknowledgements. So to conclude this insightful panel, I would like to thank the whole team that made this possible. So if you can turn on your cameras, that would be great. I would like to thank Cristina, Emil, Alejandro, naturally our director, Ivory, and all, the whole team at KIC, and of course the panelists and all the participants for joining this panel. I think this is only the beginning, and I think we will have panels on these topics, probably with bots and all sorts of participants in the future. So thank you very much. It has been very insightful, and see you next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you very much, Jorge. You've been a great host. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Chicos, maravilloso. Wow.
Estuvo súper, muchas felicidades.
¿Ya estamos fuera del aire o
Yes.
estamos todavía?
Creo que ya quedan muy poquitos. Sí.